literally a tool of like, if you're frustrated, if you feel stuck, if you're not feeling passionate, here's a tool to guide you, to help guide yourself to a better life, right? So you can experiment, but it's not in a way of religion. Your body is going to be the ultimate authority, right?
Today, we're talking about how to understand yourself, how to know yourself better using tools like human design. And I've brought someone on to have a discussion with me about it. Her name is Casey Marriott. And so welcome, Casey. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction before we actually jump in and get started. So welcome to Great Life, Greater Impact. I'm Janet. I'm your host, and I'm a quantum healing practitioner. Also, I do soul self restoration technique, which is I help take people to the uncharted waters of who they really are for healing, for transformation, for spiritual awakening and spiritual sovereignty, all those things that we're really, really hungry for right now. And as of recent, human design has become one of those tools that I've just absolutely fallen in love with. My dear friend Lisa reintroduced it to me, and we've been learning how each other works. And the beauty of that is learning how to hold space for one another and for ourselves and give each other grace and ourselves. So I'm excited to jump into this. I'm going to turn some time to you, Casey, to just give introduction. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how did you come to the study of human design? Maybe share a little bit about that so people can get to know you.
Yeah. So I'm a reflector type in human design, and there's 4 or 5 types in human design, depending on who you follow. But the reflector type is very rare, and it's like 1% of the population. But it shows, how much we can be operating against our natural self. And so obviously I needed to start answering those questions. Why am I so tired all the time? Or why don't I work well with discipline and structure? And so slowly, people started mentioning it to me. And so I looked into it, and then I found out I'm a reflector, so opposite to 99% of the population. And so much just fell into place. Like, oh, that's why no one understands me. Or that's why I'm just really suffering in this current world, which is very generator structured world, right? And so I'm a very opposite of very free flow, open energy, need no structure, can't fit in a box. And so, and as I've kind of discovered human design, it really allows me also to understand everybody else's actions and how we can understand and rise above the way people are also interacting with us. And, we were just talking about this before. For example, if you have an open solar plexus or an emotional center, you really take on the emotions of others. Now, there's certain types like the generators and manifestors who get really angry or really frustrated, and they have these snaps. And to someone like me, that can be just, completely overwhelming because you're just having this whole emotional reaction. And so even that means that I was not allowing people to have their emotional reactions. I would try and tighten it down. So even that allowed me to be like, oh, because I don't feel much anger myself, but I have to understand other people feel that, and that it's not related to me or I'm not responsible. So it also helped me in all of my interactions. So you can start imagining dealing with family, right? If someone is in a really frustrated place, you can all of a sudden have understanding and be like, okay, something's not quite right here. How can I help that person? Rather than being like, oh, you're so angry, stop being frustrated, So human design is a really great path for understanding yourself, understanding how you interact with the world, and understanding why people are acting the way they're acting. And so, I think one reason why I'm so excited to get into this field and to speak more about it is because I am such on the opposite direction. I teach or show everybody else how to draw back a bit to the other side, because it's very rare that anyone's on either spectrum, right? So you've got, completely structured, fully defined, consistent, go-getter people, and then completely free flow, non-structured. And everyone's a mixture in between. but we're all trying to be on this one side. You know, for some reason, society has created this ideal that we should be on this side. But the reality is probably only 1% are on that side. And we're all trying to strive to be something we will never achieve.
Yeah.
So when I start speaking up and saying, oh, this is the completely other way, it helps other people understand what's their mixture of flexibility versus structure. And a lot of people will be like 30% structure, 70% flow, or whatever. And each person has to find their way. So that's why I'm very excited about it. I think just because I am that other signpost.
Yeah.
And all I can do is be an example, and it shows other people, oh, I need to start incorporating or see or experiment how I can also implement some of these things, or to see if they match me. So
I
yeah,
love
I did
that.
a couple of years ago. Yeah.
You know, this human design tool, it actually reminds me a lot of, you remember back in the day when the love languages all came out, the 5 love languages, and it was really a great thing to understand what your loved ones, how they interpreted love. And I thought that was a really great start. I think that human design also fills that need. It allows us to see people, oh, you're a projector, so you need this, or this is how you operate. And it's not that you're crazy or that there's something wrong with you. I think a lot of projectors and reflectors who are very rare in society, they probably go about half of their lives thinking there's something wrong with me because I don't fit in. But it's not, when you finally start to understand the nuances of your human design chart and realize how you work, what your gifts are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, then you can back off and give yourself a little bit of grace and go, oh, this is me. And it's okay to be this. I'm not crazy. I'm not abnormal. This is me. And this is what I offer to the world. And then I can shine in knowing that I'm supposed to be this way. I'm wired this way.
Yeah, and that's so true, because like human design, it teaches us that there's duality of everything. And we know we can't repress parts of ourselves. That still will lead to unhappiness, frustration, anger. We have to accept that we have these things inside of us and just try and act on the higher expression, or act with accountability, right? So I think it gives us a much more accepting way of, instead of trying to cut or hate parts of ourselves, we say, okay, I know I've got an angry side, right? How can I do better? What is that anger showing me? Rather than saying, I shouldn't be angry, I need to stop yelling at people. It's like, ask yourself the question, why am I yelling, right? Rather than, I shouldn't be this, I shouldn't be this. And so it allows us to move forward in a more accepting role, and then you can use it to your advantage. So again, like that frustration or that anger, it's a sign something is not right in that moment. Something needs to change, right? So you even can start using it as your guidance system. So human design ultimately it shows us how to start listening to our body again, because we're detached from the body. We've almost lost self-autonomy. We're not raised to learn how to listen to ourselves and to judge things based on what our body says. We're taught to make decisions and judge ourselves based on the mind, right? The mind takes away our self-autonomy, because the mind is full of conditioning or societal beliefs, patriarchal system, racism, minorities, whatever. You should be this, you should be left structured, you should be consistent. So this takes away from our self-autonomy. We're no longer asking ourselves, do I feel good in the moment? Does this even suit me? Why am I burnt out every day? Why am I so unhappy? We think, no, I need to be this way. So that's why I like it. It's very much about learning how to listen and let yourself be the driver again.
I love that. It's something interesting so I've been teaching these free classes every week, every Tuesday for the last 5 years. And something that we talked about a lot last year was spiritual sovereignty. And that's what you just said. That's what it reminds me of, is that we're all seeking for that autonomy, that spiritual sovereignty, where we don't all have to fit in the same box as a collective, but we can hold space and have grace for the individuality of our uniqueness and still find a place to unity and oneness and collaboration and that collective mind, and come from a place of love instead of judgment and fear.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I'm just seeing some people are starting to put their type in, right? So we've got a few generators, we've got a reflector, a projector, a manifesting generator. So we pretty much have all of the types except a manifester. But it's like you say, right? Like, also understanding that we are interested about different things and we act in a different way. And so, even this whole concept of chasing a stereotypical dream of success. When we check in with ourselves, what's your version of success, right? And how do you bring that? Like, it just brings so much back to self. Like, why am I asking, or why am I trying to chase this ideal that I have to, have lots of money? Some people's version of success is to go run away in the forest and communicate with nobody. Right? And
That's right.
But they never ask themselves or allow themselves even to ask those questions like, do I want to run away to the forest? No, they're like, no, I should earn 6 figures a year. I should, so it's like, it's very validating if you're ready to take that step and say, you know what, this is not working for me. I need to create. So I very much focus on self-wellness. We were talking a little bit about this before the call. Like, self-wellness is very much about, if we listen to self and we focus on our individual wellness, we show up better in life, we'll be happier, and that's how we build a better community, right? So we really do need to focus on our self-wellness. What makes you happy? What makes you fulfilled? What makes you feel passionate? These should be the norms.
Yes.
But so many people don't even feel that, and they don't know how to find that.
We're shamed for that. Our culture shames us for that, and religion and all these other societal organizations that want to fit us all into a collective box. We're shamed for pursuing the desires of our hearts, or the things that make us who we are. But I love that you said that. It is important. Why do you think that is important, that we have the self-awareness and pursue the desires of our hearts, the things that light up our souls? Why do you think that's important? I'd love to hear your take.
Well, so in human design, you have your, what I call the positive reaction and the negative reaction, or it's called the not self and the signature. And the whole concept is that the reason we go into that not self, bitterness, frustration, anger side is because we're not doing the thing that we want, or that the friends we're around are not aligned to us. The partners that we have are not treating us the way, or seeing us the way we want to be seen. So this makes us our worst self. And we want to be in our best self. So the only way to get to your best self is to align yourself to what you want, right? So if you're around a generator or a manifesting generator who are very reliant on doing the things that light them up, that make them excited, right? It's really important they follow that, and sometimes have to make selfish decisions to follow that. Because if not, oh my gosh, they're going to be a frustrated, grumpy old generator or manifesting generator, and no one's going to want to be around them, right? So it is important that we focus on being our best version, because the most important thing we have is our impact on others.
Yes.
Right? So as a reflector, because I have completely open energy,
yeah,
I think another reason which is driving this is because I'm like, I am so sick of absorbing everyone's sadness and anger and unfulfilled passions. I'm like, we really need to start tapping into this. I just can't handle more angry people, and all it is just telling them, just don't do the things you don't like. It's so simple.
It is so simple. I love that. Self-awareness resonates better with me than self-wellness resonates better with me than self-awareness. Yeah. Yeah. It's self-love. It really comes down to self-love. And I think that you cannot access the love and awareness of God until you've accessed it from here, from within. I mean, that's where God resides. The kingdom of heaven is within, right? So how do you access the kingdom of heaven? by accessing the truest, most pure nature of you and honoring that, being aware of that, having self-love, then it can spill out from there into your, do you believe that that's kind of a reality in your world too?
Yeah, I like detach from any organized religion or stuff like that. But like, if we want to talk about God, like God created everybody unique, right?
Yeah.
Literally, our DNA code is unique. So
Right.
if you want to like bring my terminology with God, right? Our purpose is to be the person that God created you to be, that
Yeah.
very, very unique individual. And this is what self-wellness is about, and why I say it's your personal version or your success niche. It's when you tap into everything that God created you to be. You're going to have a very peculiar genetic makeup, certain interests, certain experiences that are going to play into the information you're going to share with others. So we can even start accepting negative things that happen to us and say, well, that's just tapping into the lower expression of my design, and I have to like overcome it to get to my higher expression and be a teacher to others. Like, there's so many ways that we can correlate those two things, that you're made to be one unique person. And when you serve as that unique person, sure, I mean, that's doing what God asked you to do, or why he put you on this earth to do, right? Like,
I
that's the
think it's,
ultimate expression.
yeah, it's the greatest gift I think that you can give to the world. And I think that we all come here with this inherent desire to contribute. Like, what is my offering to humanity so that I can feel like I matter, like my life and my effort and my energy matters. We all want to be able to contribute in some way. And I think that is at the root, that self-wellness, self-awareness, self-love, that is at the root of finding out how you tick, how you operate. In quantum healing, the way that I learned how to understand this concept of each of us having this unique divine signature is that when we incarnate into a physical body in this physical dimension, based on where the stars have aligned, based on astrology and human design incorporates a lot of that, we have this, what they call the fundamental ray. And so you come in here at a precise time, in a precise snapshot of time within the universe, and that is your fundamental ray. And there's a lot that can be understood about who we are in this 3D dimension, that can explain a lot and give us a lot of clarity as to what is our path, what is our purpose, what are we here to give. We do have a comment here. Someone says, discovering how each of us is one of a kind in the energy we experience of who we are in this realm, and yet we have the capacity to explore the energy of the universe completely if we allow ourselves the expansiveness to do so. Yeah. Do we have a little bit of time? Could we go into maybe just talking about the different profiles or the different personalities?
Yeah. So ultimately, a big core of human design is like, how can you find what's easiest for you? How do you tap into what are your strengths, and instead of keep fighting against your weaknesses, right? So when we have this one fits all concept of society, people are they waste so much energy forcing themselves into a box they don't fit, that they don't really go anywhere. They can't really step into their success because they're fighting with their weaknesses and their vulnerabilities, instead of just being like, that doesn't work for me. What works for me, right? So when we talk about the 5 types, even we start to see the different roles we play based on kind of how we use our general energy. And so you can imagine that I think one of the closest parallels I use for this is the Myers-Briggs test, which is the introvert extrovert, right? So extroverts lose energy through socialization, and extroverts gain energy, and introverts lose energy. So it's a similar thing. How do you gain energy and not lose energy? So the 5 types, I say 5. So we have the manifested, and we also see as well, when we understand our different types, how we all function together. A little bit in this last comment, right? How do we as an individual tap into expansiveness as a collective, right? So we really all function together. And I like to use the analogy of kind of like a company. You've got the CEO, the person who's like coming up with the ideas, initiating projects, moving the company forward. And these are the manifestors. Then you've got the generators who love to build and create and bring these ideas to life. And these are the generators. And so you can see how these two start working together, right? So manifestors, they completely lose their energy after they have the big idea. But generators have consistent energy. They're here all day, every day to bring the things into being that we need, right? So without the manifestor, the generator, kind of gets a little bit misguided. So they work really well together. Then you've got the manifesting generator, which is a hybrid of the two. And this is the kind of person that can pivot really quickly and they jump around from project to project, right? And so when we get stuck somewhere, you bring in a manifesting generator and they will like take you somewhere new, right? And then you've got the projectors who are the advisors and the consultants. They see what's not working. They see how to make it better. So they then help, all these other projects that are being initiated, they help make them better. They help bring them to a higher place, right? So all together now, we're working and we're making something better together that we couldn't do on our own. And then you've got the reflectors who I kind of label as the HR. They make sure, is everyone okay? Is everyone happy? Is the company culture good? And so, they can then bring about making sure and then tweaking every other little thing so that we can all come together in a better cohesion. And so when we understand these different roles and how we use different energy, we see now we have some doing people and some thinking people. So manifesting generators and generators, they love to do. They could do all day. And in fact, when they start feeling dull and frustrated and bored with life, it's usually a sign that their sign of energetic burnout is they are not doing things they're passionate about, right? So now we also start to see how we need to treat people differently, as in a holistic therapy treatment, right? So I wouldn't go and tell a generator like, oh, you should do less. I would say, you need to change what you're doing. You're a doing person. Now, if I'm talking with a reflector or a projector or a manifestor, they're ideas people, they're thinking people. They need to sit on a couch for like 6 hours a day and think about the great ideas they want to bring into being. But if they spent all that doing energy all day, they would burn out. So when I see a projector, reflector, or manifestor in burnout stage, I have to treat them very differently. I have to say, okay, stop, you're doing too many things. Go sit on a couch. Do you know what I mean? So it even helps us, someone else can diagnose you, or you can even start self-diagnosing yourself, right? You're like, why am I burnt out? Why am I frustrated? Why do I feel dull in my life? Why do I have no passion? And the answer is going to be different based on which type you are. And we also start to see and allow ourselves to start using those strengths. So now I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be in a job where I'm just working all day long, because then no one gets that gift of that intellectual, complicated thought process that's happening all day. All of a sudden, I'm not even using the best parts of myself. I'm not going to find success that way. Whereas if a generator sits around not doing anything all day, they're not going to step into their power of creating something. So that's why I find it such a useful tool to understand how we tap into those gifts and to go with what feels easiest to us. Again, a generator would feel frustrated sitting around all day doing nothing, whereas a reflector would feel frustrated being forced to do something all day.
Yeah. So
in this way, we're seeing, okay, what doesn't make me feel good? What makes me feel good?
Yeah. I think what you're talking about is synergy. I mean, when we can maximize each other's strengths and talents and allow them to flow in that, in where they shine, then we can synergize with one another and create something awesome.
Yeah. So they even human design can go in a lot of depth. You can analyze a business structure and see who brings what gifts to the table. Or for example, every business should have at least one reflector, which would be hard, one reflector, one projector, one manifestor, and then, you know, around like 4 generators or something, right? Because that's when you start also understanding how to bring out the best. So if you are a company owner, don't go to your projectors and be like, work harder. Ask them, what do you think is working or not working in this project, right? So you can even start using that. Like if I have something that I really know that like I really want to correct or like try and find the better path, I'll go ask a projector for advice, you know? So
Yeah.
I'll go use their talent. If I need help with building something, I'll go ask a generator.
I love that. Somebody reached out to me last night, actually, and they said, I love that you're going to be talking about human design in this class today because she said, I've been using it for 10 years and I used it to raise my children. I used it, it helped me to understand the different nuances of my kids and how some of them needed to be invited to do something rather than through authoritarian, voice to tell them what to do. So she said it really helped me understand how to treat my children. And now that she's a grandmother, she's helping her children to understand their children better. She's got all these little projectors and it's difficult in this culture and society to be the ones that are the most rare because that's not how society is conditioned and that conditioning can be really can create a lot of PTSD, for the ones who have a more rare personality type.
So much. But yeah, even like whether you're rare or not rare, like it's like you say, it's the way that people can interact with you and with families. So even like generators and manifesting generators make up 70% of the population, knowing that they're going to get frustrated if you force them to do something they don't like, right? It still helps you interact with them as well. Even if they are more common, they still have a very unique way that they need to be treated and seen. Much like you said, you're talking about the projectors need to be invited in. Generators and manifesting generators need to respond to something. So it's really helpful that you're there asking them questions to help them through their decision-making process. So a big part of human design, which I'll quickly go into now, is that so we have our energy type, which we've just kind of talked a little bit about, and it explains how you use energy and the best ways you use energy and where your strengths in energy are, like we said, building or advising. And then you have a strategy and an inner authority. And so this helps you make decisions or move through life in a more, in a better way, in a way that your body is speaking to you. So that's a little bit what you're talking about as well. So projectors shouldn't dedicate their energy to anything unless there's an invitation. A generator and a manifesting generator shouldn't go running off to do something unless their sacral response in their gut lights up with a hard yes. It's like, yes, and it's this excitement. It's like this little fire in their belly. So when someone asks them like, oh, would you like to eat this for dinner or would you like to start this new hobby? So they can ask themselves, do they get that excitement rush? And if they do, it's like, yes, I should commit some energy to this, right? And if they don't get that, they shouldn't commit energy, right? Their body's saying no. Or if a projector doesn't get an invitation, then they're going to be forcing themselves into situations that are probably not going to feel good, or a manifest has to follow their urges, right? And this helps them only focus on the projects that really excite them. If they follow something that's not really an urge, they're not going to get energy behind it. So when we're tapping into what feels good for us, we'll normally find that we're tapping into our natural productivity and our natural motivation. That makes life so much easier and that makes us so much happier. So when we use this strategy and authority, we can start asking our bodies yes or no. And so anyone who's seen their chart, that's what that means, right? You combine your strategy and authority and ask yourself, every time you're coming to a question, tap into that strategy and authority. For reflectors, it's wait a lunar month. And what that means is that we have so many ideas that if we tried to follow all of them, we would lose energy. Over the month, they whittle away and finally we see the answer. That's when we know we can commit our very little amount of energy to the one thing we love the most. So you see how we each can start making better decisions in our life. And so this is about everything. Imagine a generator, like say they see a friend that's been a very long time friend, but every time they see them, they feel restrictive and angry. Like their body is literally saying, you don't like this person.
Wow.
You know, like their
Yeah.
body is leading them to make a better decision to help them feel happier, right?
Mhm.
And so then we move on to our not self and our signature, or what I call the negative reaction and the positive reaction. And this is your body's kind of little tweak as you go along, right? So you're following your strategy and authority. You're like, oh, that excited me. And you're a generator. You're like, oh, that excited me. And you start doing it. And the not self comes out. You start getting frustrated. Your body's now saying, okay, we're done with this now. We need to move on, right? Or you'll feel satisfaction, which is your positive reaction, your signature. And if you continually just feel so satisfied, every time you do that, your body is saying, yes, yes, keep with this, keep going, this is working, right? So now we've even got this like decision-making center, and then these little tweaks, and our body is constantly communicating with us. And it's just really tapping into what you really want, what your body is trying to tell you.
Yeah, I love that. So people are asking really good questions. I think these would be good questions to respond to. Chrissy says, how do you know what you are? How does the system work? I was told I was a generator, but I feel like a projector. Do you know what? That's interesting because I'm a generator, but I don't act like a generator. Like I don't have a lot of anger issues. I act more like a reflector in a lot of ways. But could you give maybe some ideas as to where people could go to print out their charts, and then how to understand what they are and how they work?
Look, I'm just posting my link here. And just in case it's not clear, once you generate your chart, there's a little download click, and that will give you a 5-page report that will explain
Okay.
the basics of your type, inner authority, and then your not self and your signature. So it's a really good thing to start with. So if you don't know, so you can only be one type. It is basically, it's the, planet astrology alignment on the minute that you're born, right? And we know that the impact of the planets can create specific characteristics. And so you can only be one type. What does it mean if you don't feel that you're that type? There's many explanations. One is that, okay, you do have to be pretty specific with birth time, right? So that can change things. So that's why I always say use it as a tool, not a Bible. We're not trying to add another religion where you're like, I must hold on to what this tells me. No, it's always about how do I feel? And now the thing of healing is that there's so many layers, and human design is very complex. So sometimes you could tell somebody about something down here, but there's so much conditioning and they're so far from even being that person that it's not going to align with them. That's not going to resonate. They're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that might come though, 10 years later, they might be like, go through a whole healing self-alignment process. And 10 years later, they're like, that makes so much sense now.
Yeah.
Or like you said, we're talking about higher and lower expression. So if you're not frustrated, great. That means you're in that higher expression. You're in that satisfaction stage. You're in your signature. You're aligned. You found your path. Congratulations, right? Like that's the goal. So, it's just showing us what might happen, but you still have to judge, well, where am I on this scheme? And so someone said they feel more like a projector. What could that mean? That could also mean that there was a projector around you. It might also mean, so if you had like a mother who was a projector and had chronic bitterness their entire life, and as this person also said, they have a undefined, oh no, they didn't say, but if you have an undefined solar plexus and you're absorbing your mother's bitterness for the first 20 years of your life, well, you might actually find that you're full of bitterness and it doesn't make any sense to you? Why are you having bitterness, right? So it could also be something like that.
It could be programming, right?
Programming. It could also be, you know, you have to understand, you have to interpret the words through your own body. So frustration can mean many things, right? So if you're a generator, it could mean, you know, an internal hate towards everything about your life, you know. So you might say, well, that feels like bitterness to me, but maybe it's a deep frustration that's just so ingrained in every part of your life. You just feel bitter towards life. So, you know, there's many ways to explain why you might feel something or not feel something that's in your chart. Like I say, just never hold on to anything too tightly. What resonates with you in the moment is what usually the thing that needs to be addressed first. And that's why it's like you resonate with it most. It's easier to kind of like unravel that knot next, unravel the next knot next, and maybe 10 knots later, you're like, oh, now I'm starting to see what they were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. She was asking, she has a solar plexus that hurts all the time. She's a generator. Solar plexus hurts all the time. How do you tell what's right? I think you answered that.
Yeah, I will say, yeah. So again, it could be a deep, deep unalignment. But yes, if someone has an undefined solar plexus, or this is our emotional center, you can feel other people's emotions. And so if someone around you is very angry, it will hurt. Also, solar plexus, you know, yeah, if you have a lot of conditioning, or maybe you're not speaking up for your emotions, because this can also really cause people to avoid confrontation, to avoid standing up for what they believe. So it could even be that like they're your emotions that are waiting to be let out. So this is where you start to do individual sessions, right? So obviously I'm a human design reader and I do reflection therapy. I'm trying to make it a bit different than just a black and white human design reading, because there's so much involved. And like I said, there's usually something that's pressing. That's the only thing you can deal with first, right? Don't look deeper. Do this one first, then this one, then this one.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you take that approach, because there are so many nuances to human design. You could go so deep because there's so many rabbit holes you can go down in just learning to understand yourself. So I love that your focus is mainly on, well, what's pressing right now up against you right now? So I see that you have posted your link where people can go and print out their chart, get a 5-page description on some generalities of what's your true self and your not self. What are the different ways that you operate and process through life. So I will also post that in the replay. So if you're watching this on YouTube later, we'll give you that link down below in the description below. But that link is there for you guys now in the class. You're welcome to go grab that, print out your chart, and gain some understanding. It'll make a lot more sense what Casey's talking about in this class. Are there any other questions that we didn't? How do we use our birth date and time? It did not specify. And do we use maiden name or married name? Does it matter?
Yeah, I just wrote name doesn't matter. We're just looking at the specific birth time, date, and place to look at what was the astrological alignment on that day. So that's why birth time has to be very specific.
Yeah. Alicia says the chart is so complicated looking. Well, it is. There's a lot of nuances, like I said, and that's why I think it's really helpful to initially just read the generalities. I mean, there are places you can go on YouTube to find out, how does a generator work? How do I interact with a generator? What, you can look up videos on YouTube that can help you with that, or you can hire someone like Casey to help you walk through some of those nuances and get more familiarized with how the chart works and how to use it to your advantage. Anything else that we haven't talked about that we maybe could cover?
Well, I'll just like add a little bit to that question you just asked. So it is really complicated, but the core of human design always comes back to your type, your strategy, and then your not self and your signature, because this is the actual way you move through life and make decisions. So this is the main thing you need to master. the rest of the chart comes back out or becomes more relevant as you master that, right? So a reading can be very good as a very I do it as a kind of like self-wellness check-in, let's see where you're at today and which are the core things you do know how to use or don't know how to use or are working with or working against. But ultimately, the most important thing you need to do will be in that 5-page free report, which is what's your strategy? What's your authority? And then what's those positive and negative things to just constantly guide you? Because that's what is the most useful part of human design is how can I use this as a tool to make better decisions that are aligned with what I want and who I am. And then the rest of the chart, all those lines, all those numbers, all those like colors and white centers and stuff, this talks more about the nuances of your personality and how you can also then go deeper and identify when you're in a higher or lower expression. So I'll talk a little bit about the energy centers, for example. So if you're looking at your chart and you're going to see there's some colored shapes and some open or white shapes, and this really shows us what are our consistent traits. The consistent traits are the colored ones, and our inconsistent traits are the white ones. So a lot of our lessons and conditionings will come from those white centers, right? So this is what we're talking about before. If you have a undefined emotional center or that solar plexus, if that's white, if anyone has that white, that means that you're always, this is the definition of an empath. These are the people who absorb the emotions of others. So just knowing that you're going to feel that pain of the emotions in others, and then understanding that all the emotions you feel are not yours, that can be life-changing, right? So all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so angry right now. Why do I feel so angry? And then you look around and someone else is angry. You're like, oh, I'm not angry. They're angry. So this is how you start understanding what's actually happening in your body, because sometimes we don't understand what's happening. Or like if you have if the top two are white, this is the head, and the head is the idea center, and then the ajna, and the ajna is the concept center.
I'm going to do a screen share. So this one's mine.
Okay,
so you're talking about like the head, like mine are undefined, and that's what we call that. So you can maybe just use this chart as a way to describe.
Okay, sure. So, you'll see here, and then we go into more specifics, right? So actually your head is completely open. There's not even a little red line or black line, right? So this means that, the lower expression of this is just so you're constantly absorbing the ideas from around you. Yeah. This can be so overwhelming. So you're constantly just like boom, 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 right? There's no color there. There's no consistency that you can be like, stop, I don't want to do that right now. No, you're a vessel. You're constantly passively absorbing the thoughts and ideas around you. So when you learn this, you're like, when you start getting all that overthinking, right, you have to start being like, oh, I have no consistency to order my thoughts. I have to now actively order my thoughts. I have to actively start saying, does this matter? And if it doesn't, I can't give weight to that, because with the undefined head or open head, we don't know what to give weight to. We don't know what's important, what's not important. That's why we get stuck in overthinking. We're thinking about everything as if our life depends on it, right? So it starts giving you these tools of how to manage yourself. And this is why I like it better than any other kind of tool that tries to implement their version onto you, right? They're like, do this and you'll succeed. I like it the other way, where it's like, okay, I know this is happening. What works for me and how does it work best for me, right? So, and this is when, if someone's like comes along and be like, just look within for the ideas, that's not going to work for a person like this. They're externally inspired. They're inspired by absorbing the ideas from around them, right? So even you start seeing how to tap into the gift of that. And so you have an undefined ajna as well, which is the second one. And that's very much about ideas and concepts. So, again, you're very open-minded. These people, they don't fixate to one way or another. maybe the day before someone's like, well, climate change is not really real. And you're like, well, I guess I could see that. And the next day someone's like, climate change is real. So you're like, oh my gosh, it's real. Because you're going to be absorbing the ideas from other people. So you have to be aware of that. You're like, why did yesterday I believe this? And because you're just so open-minded.
Yeah.
Now, when you come across someone who has this defined, so if anyone has that second triangle defined,
meaning there's a color.
There's a color, yes, that it's colored in. This means that they're very set in their ideas. They have internal ideas, internal concepts. They're not bringing together all the different concepts around them to create something unique. They're just looking within and saying, well, I think it's this. And so they can become very close-minded. So when you're talking with someone and one's undefined ajna and one's defined, oh my gosh, they annoy each other so much. Because the defined ajna is like, oh my gosh, this person is so wishy-washy, always changing their mind, can't decide anything, not certain about anything. And then this other one is like, oh my gosh, they're so close-minded. They're not even, can't even consider a different opinion. But when you realize which one you are, now I'm just like, oh, defined ajna, I'm not even going to try. Smile and nod. Smile and nod. Because that's their gift. Yeah. And for some reason, they're meant to go around preaching the exact way they see it and their exact belief system, whether you agree with it or not. That's what they're here to do. You have to accept that, you know? So we start to see how we can, you know, learn about ourselves. So like I said, strategy, authority, that's about how you move through the world. The rest of your chart is when you're ready to dive into understanding the nuances of yourself or where you might pick up on, you know, really pressing behaviors that are bothering you. So this is where we normally look at whether you have consistent traits, right? So for consistent traits, the lower expression is that, you know, maybe they can become too forceful in that, you know, and they have to learn to like, well, okay, I'll agree. These people have to learn to agree to disagree, right? And if you have lots of open centers, you have to learn not to be taken by the wave of whoever you're around. You know, you have to learn how to ground yourself in yourself. Mm-hmm. So they have two very different paths and two very different ways to treat things. So again, like I see here, you've got the defined identity. So this is the yellow one here. So people with defined identity, right? They know who they are. They generally know their life direction. They feel so confident that they're on their life path because it's so defined and consistent inside of them throughout their life. Now, if you have this white, oh my gosh, like, so we try to, you know, the general thing of feeling good is that we say you must know who you are. But if you have this white, it means that you actually are multiple identities. You're the identity of who you're around. You will change jobs many times and change life directions many times because it's not fixed. You don't have a fixed identity. You know, you're like, oh, I'll try this and maybe I'll try this and maybe I'll try this, right? And so we try to force these people to be like, no, but self-healing says that you must know who you are. Not for these people. They will never answer that question, who am I? Their question is, who am I right now? Who am I today? Who am I around these people? And that's how they understand themselves. So again, right, the poor people who have spent their entire life trying to ask the question, who am I? And you come along and you say, oh, that doesn't matter for you. And the thing is, if they try to force who they are, that's when they feel the not self come in. Now they get sad because they don't know who they are. They get frustrated because they can't answer that question, right? Yeah. But it's not for them. It's not natural for them.
Mm-hmm. I see someone has their hand raised. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, Casey. How's it going?
Hi.
Okay, I'm trying to lower my hand. So can you talk just for a moment about reflectors that have all of their centers are open and white, and how it's different from what you just talked about with the other open centers of the others?
Yeah, so, you know, when you have defined centers, right, the complete opposite of a reflector. So Lisa and I are both reflectors. So everything of ours is open. Everything is absorbing. Everything is coming from the external world. And so this means that over their entire life, they will never, ever be consistent or one thing or at one time. Like they are just so open. They're constantly changing. So reflectors show us how to detach from things, right? Consistent people, people with the colored centers, they're very attached to everything that's defined because it's consistent through their whole life. That is what they call identity, or how they know themselves. They know they're always going to think this way, have these emotions, have this amount of energy, right? It's very consistent. For a reflector, they have to just throw that all out the window. There's just zero consistency. Their emotions will change multiple times throughout the day. Their identity will change. Their ideas will change. What excites them can change moment to moment. It's a lot. But that's why our strategy is the lunar month, because we have everything is just basically attacking our body at the same time, that we have to learn the difference between external and internal and give time not to clutch to anything, because it's so inconsistent. If we even try to clutch to something today and try to demand that we must hold on to that tomorrow when we've already changed, we're already going into our not self. We're already going to start feeling that we're off our path. So this is why reflectors are the 1% and so different. We'll bring everybody else or teach everybody else that there is a different way to be. And then they have to learn within themselves, well, how inconsistent am I? I'm not that inconsistent, but they're teaching me, oh, I can be inconsistent. And reflectors' role is that we are meant to detach 100% from anything. We rise above everything. So even if someone is yelling in my face, I have now learned how to detach and be like, it's not me. It's not my emotion. I don't need to identify with, because I can rise above it. I can see, not to hold on that they're also going to change in a second, So
Yeah.
So it's very different. Yeah.
The beauty in that is that there's less suffering when you can easily let go and realize, okay, this isn't about me, and it's not something I have to cling to. Because oftentimes when we take things personally and we cling to things, that's where suffering happens.
So this is the lesson of anyone who has a white center on their chart. Usually the white center is where your lessons, conditioning, learning to detach, where your biggest growth can happen, right? Because it's free. There's no boundaries on it. You can actually just explode yourself into that and be like, I don't have fixed emotions. I'm going to try all the emotions, or go and sample a whole bunch of different people's emotions. Like there's a lot of freedom in that open center. So, it's really interesting to look especially at those in your chart.
So someone just asked, where do you get the 5-page printout? Maybe we can get some clarity on that.
So after you generate your chart, it's the system I use. Unfortunately, I can't change it. There's just this little download click link, and that will download a 5-page chart.
Okay. So we've given you guys the link. You can use that. It's in the chat, and we'll put it in the replay below when it's posted on YouTube. You'll have that link. Go print that out. Elaine says, this is probably for reflectors, I'm guessing, use patience with yourself moving forward. It takes 7 years to move out of the old and integrate the new when one decides to experiment. That's projectors?
No. So in human design, well, in science, cellular regeneration takes 7 years. So they say in human design that the day you find out your type and you start acting differently, right, it's going to start having body changes and cellular changes.
Yeah.
But these will take 7 years. We call this the deconditioning process. So you can look at it in many different ways. Technically speaking, it's about cell regeneration. But on the higher level, it's about to make these changes and realign your life. It's not like you're going to be like, oh, even if you were like, I'm going to align myself to my design and quit my job tomorrow, doesn't mean you're going to step straight into that success, right? You still have so much unraveling, deconditioning to do. And that's why they say 7 years. a lot of people argue whether you need to actually know human design for 7 years, because many of us actually are initiated or naturally step into our design long before we find human design. So that's what happened with me. I even started explaining to myself what's happening to my body, because I could feel I was sampling other people's energy. I described it as kind of like this superwoman, Catwoman slinking around a party and trying on people's identities. This was years before I found out I was a reflector. And I'm like, oh, I've been doing this for a long time. So people's 7 years can start in many different places, according to me, not according to human design. But there's many different like traditional and modern human design. And you also have to choose what you want to take.
Yeah. We have just a couple more minutes for any last final questions or comments. And then after we get through those, Casey, I'm going to give you the final takeaway. I'm going to give you the final word, just kind of sum things up based on, we covered a lot of generalities today, and that was the point. I really hope that you guys will explore and go a little deeper, do some of your own research. Google can bring up a lot of answers if you have questions, or you can hire someone like Casey to help you unravel those things that you're dealing with and struggling with in the hopes to understand yourself better, so that you can then understand others better, so that we can then build communities of unity and collaboration. I don't see any final questions coming in, so I'm just going to give you unless you see any that I've missed. I'm going to give you.
Does anyone want to, ask a question or raise your hand about your chart? I'd be happy to do a couple of quick questions.
Yeah, if Mike's got a comment or a question, go ahead.
So I'm just curious, can you use this as like a compatibility chart? Like, as far as like, if I'm a generator, am I better mixed with a reflector or whatnot?
Yeah, so there's a whole nother thing. So all those lines on your chart, right? These are your consistent things. They connect with the lines in other people's chart, right? And that changes your energy when you're together. So as we know that energy interacts, scientifically proven that when energy comes together, it has interactions, it changes. So what happens, say, for example, I'm a reflector. If we were to go hang out, I would be tapping into your generator energy, right? And if any part of our chart joined, for example, say you would have...
She's talking about these lines. If these lines and channels and gates connect with each other.
Right. So look, so that red square down the bottom, that's the sacral center, right? That's also the reproduction and sexual center. And so you'll see to the right of that, there's this little line, that's line 6. If a person with a line 6 meets someone with the line 59, this is called the mating channel, and they will have like huge magnetic attraction. So yes, absolutely, your chart will combine. Or for example, you can see under her red square is a white one, but you see she has some little black lines, and there's a gate 3, a gate 9. If someone has the other side of that, they make the whole channel, and that's where we get the colored centers. It defines the center. So all of a sudden she would also start having, so that's the root center. She would also start having that defined traits as well when she's with certain people. So certain couples, maybe together they don't have a defined identity, but their chart connects in such a way that together they define the identity center, that yellow one there, and they both all of a sudden start understanding themselves better, who they are through the other person. So it's a whole nother thing. So yes, there's 100%, you can do compatibility readings. You can see how two couples interact, and same thing, right? You're a generator. So in a dating scene, someone might be like, would you like to go here? And you have to, or they'll reach out to you or something, can be like, oh, hey, I saw your profile. Would you like to chat? Your sacrals be like, yes or no, excitement or like, right? So it's even going to guide you to the relationships that are going to be more fulfilling for you. And so we also do family compatibility. We do company compatibility, right? So you see, sometimes if you have lots of hanging gates and you're with somebody else, you can actually define each other 100%. So all of your color, all of the centers become defined, they become colored. And so you'll even feel in the presence of certain people, you start processing your thoughts better, you start being able to speak better. Like it feels as if you're tapping into everything consistent that you know about yourself. So we're going to have some really great connections with people. And then other ones where it doesn't really maybe connect all those gates, and, you know, it would be like a kind of half attraction or a kind of half interest in each other, but, you know, it's not really just that all pull. So for sure, we use it a lot in relationships as well. That's a good question.
Yeah. There's a lot of rabbit holes and a lot of nuances that you can go down with just seeing what gates and channels that you complete in one another and how many of those do complete in the different connections and companionships that can be formed. Someone says, I'll show my chart if you like. I messaged you on Facebook.
I just want to answer some of the other questions I said. So someone said, how do you ride out the emotional wave? So again, if you have that solar plexus defined and it's colored in, then we start looking at what gates or channels are coming in. So to answer someone else's question, they're like, why are Janet's all straight and why are mine curvy? So the straight ones, this is a half channel. The curvy ones are the channels. This means you have the two sides or the two dualistic sides that create a very defined trait. So when it becomes a channel, that's when it also defines the energy centers on either side. That's where you get the colored centers. So this entire thing becomes very consistent over your life. It is activated, right? So if you just have the straight one, that means you just have half of that. So that's where we start to see that it only comes into activation with other people if they connect it, or based on so many things, again, very like based on planet transitions. So those people will feel those traits more inconsistently because they've just got half of the channel. It's not consistent. But if you have the full curvy one, right, that's consistent. So if you have it, okay, I'm going to talk about the defined emotion to the question. So we can see this person, right? They have the 1222 channel, right? So they've got both sides, the two gates that make the channel. And so they have defined solar plexus. They have defined emotions. People who have this means that they will have emotional waves their entire life. They will have highs and lows. And if they can really tap in, they'll even know when they're on the high, when they're on the low. So this creates a lot of uncertainty because their mind and decisions are changing according to their emotions. If they're in emotional high, they love everything and everybody's wonderful and everything's amazing. And when they're in their low, they hate everything and everything's bad.
Yeah.
So if you make a decision on one of these extremes, right, you're stuck in the emotional wave. And the emotions don't bring clarity. So you have to wait until you're in that emotional neutral state to make that decision, or you feel out the decision over all your emotional waves. And if it's the same answer, whether you're in a high, a low, or a neutral, that's when you know that yes. Now the gates and the channels that are coming off this defined solar plexus, they give the nuances of the type of emotions and the type of waves you're going to have. So, you know, the 1222, because it's connected to the throat center, it can be very emotional in its communication. So they have to be very careful that that they don't communicate when they're in a real high or a real low, because they will say things that they regret later. And this kind of emotional wave is kind of like intermediate, right? It will come and it will go and it will come and it will go. And so they need to be quite aware of it. Whereas they've got the 59-6 channel, which connects the emotional with the sacral center. And this one's a little bit more subtle, right? There's more subtle waves. And then if you go out to the outer side where you've got that 36, and if that connects with a 35, this is a crashing emotional wave. So it's like a tension, 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 crashing. right? So now all of a sudden you might be like, oh, that explains like so many of my arguments, right? So maybe you're in a relationship and you're just like mostly happy, but then every few months, all the tension builds up and you have this huge fight, right? So it helps you understand even the nuances of your emotions and how to identify like, oh, the tension's building, there's going to be a crash. I should be more aware of that, especially if you're making decisions, right? And you feel that tension building, you'd be like, okay, now might not be a good time to make a decision, right? So it helps you listen to the nuances of your body, the nuances of your behavior. And what I like to say, I call it like the A++ approach. You are aware of it, you accept it, but then you have to learn to act with accountability, right? So it's like, okay, I know that you might have really crashing emotional waves, but you have to learn to act with accountability. So don't communicate when you're on that low. The other thing I love about the emotional wave, if there's a few people here with it, is that, you know, it can feel like depression. And of course, depression is a separate thing and must be treated accordingly. But a lot of times it's people's emotional wave. But when they're in that low point, they're like, oh, I shouldn't be low. Why am I low? And they start looking for a reason. And that's when they can start projecting their emotions on others and make others responsible for their emotions. So it's like, oh, it's because you did this and that's upsetting me. It's your fault. But if they were just like, oh, I'm just in a low, there's no reason. I shouldn't attach meaning to this. I shouldn't look for a reason. This helps them to manage that emotional wave, especially in relationships, right? So this is how we can kind of use that. But yes, the specific question was about decisions. So understand that the emotions cloud your clarity. So you have to learn how to create and understand your clarity through your very indecisive emotional waves. So that is actually one of the inner authorities, right? So you've got strategy, authority. This person is an emotional manifesting generator. How does that work in a real life? It means that your strategy is a manifesting generator. So it's like you're going to get that excited sacral hit, right? So strategy is invest your energy in things that make you feel excited. So boom, you get that yes in your sacral, it's around your stomach area. But because you're an emotional manifesting generator, right? Follow your strategy, sacral response, check. Inner authority is emotional, as an emotional authority. So then after receiving that sacral hit, you then need to wait out your emotional waves until you make that final decision. That's how emotional manifesting generators make decisions, right? Now, emotional manifesting generators also jump around a lot, right? So they're like, boom, this interests me. Boom, this interests me. Boom, this interests me, right? But don't invest your energy until that emotional wave confirms it like, oh, yes, this is a double yes for me. Sacral and emotions both say yes. So that's some insight into how you can start implementing strategy and authority in a realistic way.
Yeah. So checking in with your gut in order to make those decisions, make sure that it's a gut check and that your body's saying, yep.
And then the inner authority. So it's a two-step process. Decision making is strategy and then authority.
Okay. Awesome. Wow. Now we have a ton of really interesting questions. I don't know that we're going to be able to get to them all. Someone says, what does it mean that my not self theme is frustration? That was his question on the chart.
Okay. So not self is what we said is your negative reaction. And these are these little guiders of what's not right for you. So frustration will come out. Like there's this part of human design that, you know, divine path or purpose, right? So when you're off that path, your frustration is going to come in. But in a more logical way, you can just say it's your body saying, no, I don't want to do this. It does not make me happy, right? Your body's saying no. It's your no response. So you listen to that. And even if, let's say, the sacral initially said, okay, someone was like, do you want to go hiking? And you're like, yes, right? Sacral's yes. But then on the day, you're like actually in a different place. And all of a sudden you're feeling frustrated that you have to go hiking, that you made this commitment, that you said yes, right? And so that frustration's coming up. That's your body saying, go cancel, right? You're going to show up as your cranky self and no one's going to be happy about that because you don't want to do it. And if you're getting that satisfaction, that positive response, and you're like, yes, I want to do this. Yes. And then the day comes, you're like, yes, I still want to do this. Go for it. You're going to feel happy and it's going to fill your cup up, even if you want to describe it like that, the things that are going to take from your cup and the things that are going to fill your cup up. What's frustrating you, what's making you feel satisfied, right? It's just your no response.
Yeah. It's paying attention to how you work, how you operate, and what the authority is that helps to govern those decisions. We could go on and on and on for days on this topic. My recommendation is go print your chart, read through the 5-page report, get familiar with some of the basics, your strategy and your authority and the different things that you can understand. And if you want, you can even let Google help you do some research as to what some of those different numbers on your chart mean, what the channels are, what the gates are, what they represent, what manifestors, what the qualities of a manifestor are versus a generator or projector or a reflector. Any of those. You can do your own research on some of this, but if you feel like you need to go deeper, then by all means, get with someone like Casey. You can hire her to help you.
Yeah, and I'll send a link. I have a free workshop as well, and it actually goes through each part of your chart and how you can learn to read it and what to look for. So I'll send that over as well, and that to be the link in the description, and that will also explain a lot of things that you're asking me as well,
Okay.
or everyone's asking in the comments.
That's perfect. And then we're also going to share with you how you can get in touch with Casey to go a little bit deeper if that's what you decide that you need to do. Gosh, thank you guys for being here. This was a really great discussion. Thank you, Casey, for spending some time with us today. I'm going to give you just the final takeaway, just your final thoughts, whatever's bubbling up in the moment.
Yeah, so Janet and I had this little discussion before, and we really talked about like how interesting it is that people find their human design, but the real thing is that not many people experiment or use it. It's very validating when you first find out like, oh, I'm a generator or I'm a projector. It makes so much sense. But what's really interesting is how you then live it out and experiment with it and see if it actually does work for you or not. And obviously I'm a very different type, but the more I tap into the things it's telling me and experiment with it, the better I see that I am becoming aligned. It's literally a tool of like, if you're frustrated, if you feel stuck, if you're not feeling passionate, here's a tool to guide you, to help guide yourself to a better life, right? So you can experiment, but it's not in a way of religion. Your body is going to be the ultimate authority, right? So you experiment. So for example, I'll talk very quickly, but like I have 3 right arrows and 1 left arrow. Right arrow is if you need flexibility and flow, and left is if you need structure and routine. I have been experimenting with this every day, right? To find how do I tap into a better natural productivity and a better natural motivation. When I do too much structure and routine, I become overwhelmed by all the to-do list that I procrastinate, right? And so many people who have all these right arrows are like, oh, I'm so lazy, I procrastinate so much. It's because they're using the wrong system for them. So I'm experimenting now. How do I release that structure and flow? What happens if I don't make a to-do list? Am I more productive? Am I more motivated? Because I have 3 right arrows. And so I'm finding my exact mix of how much structure. So I have 1 left arrow. I need a little bit of structure, but now I'm experimenting. How much structure do I need to ground and make all that flow and flexibility productive, right? So this is ways how we really can use it in our life to just make ourselves better, more motivated, more productive, more passionate, and at the same time, not burning myself out doing it. So again, that's very much the whole element of what I believe self-wellness to be, and why I use it as a tool above many other things. You still got to do the experiments. You still may have to do traditional talk therapy to release some of those traumas and conditionings and stuff like that that's stopping you from stepping into your design. You know, so there's so many elements, but it gives you a tool to now interpret everything you read out there for yourself. So if you're going to sign up to a class, if you're going to do a course, you take it with a grain of salt and you interpret it through your human design so it works for you. So that's really kind of the wrap up of experiment with yourself for a change instead of what everyone's telling you to do.
That could not have been more perfectly said. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience with human design. I really hope that this lit a fire in some of you to know yourself, to know thyself. There could not be an endeavor more important for you to be focusing on. It's the way that you relate to God. It's the way that you relate to others. The kingdom of heaven is within. If you want the answers, if you want the direction, if you want the guidance, that inner governing authority and knowing how you operate, knowing how you function, knowing your divine identity in this world, at least in your incarnated body, can give you that direction and that wisdom that you're looking for and seeking for, rather than waiting for, you know, the world to fit you into a box that maybe you don't belong in. So thank you again. Thanks, guys, for being here. Thank you for your participation. I love it. And as always, we're going to do an extended healing session an hour after this. Well, not an hour. It's now 40 minutes after this class is over. If you'd like to join us, you can go to greatlifegreaterimpact.com. You can sign up and become a member of that website and get all of the content, all of the material, all of the classes, plus 4 live healing sessions every single month. It's a great way to do mentoring and coaching and do your inner work together. Today, we're going to be focusing on the laws of health. There's about 23, 24 of them. I'm going to try to get through some of those just generally, and then we're going to go deeper over the next few months. Thank you guys for being here. We're going to wrap it up. I hope you have a blessed day. Thanks again, Casey, for everything, for sharing your wisdom, and appreciate you so much. We'll probably have you back. I'm hoping that you'll come back, and then hoping that people will be able to reach out to you. Where's the best place for them to go, just off the top of your head, if people want to know more about you?
Yeah, so I put in the link here. The Self Wellness Project is my website. You can find Instagram. You can sign up to my newsletter where there's weekly ways to kind of tap into your human design. So I highly recommend that. Even if you just join the newsletter, it will take you through an automated 4 or 5 emails just describing each part of your human design. There's lots of free resources on my website. So selfwellnessproject.com, you can find everything there.
Awesome. Thanks again. I hope you guys enjoy getting to know yourselves. I hope you take the time to get to know others. And I hope that you take the time to incorporate these teachings so that we can be more unified in the world with one another. Have a blessed day. Mwah. Bye, everybody.